There's been much discussion this week. I think it was Monday, maybe even Sunday. I think Wade Keller did a show and he talked about some rumors about Britt Baker and basically said that she is essentially done with the company. And we had talked about Britt. And I think the last match she had, I believe we both said, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we see of Britt Baker. And that was when she did that thing with where Serena Deeb came out at the end and she said, no one cares. And then was it after that she got strep throat and missed a couple weeks?
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah. So she was supposed to do a 4-way. Actually, I think it might have been before. I think the Serena thing might have been after. But there's been a lot going on with Britt. And then Brian Alvarez, I guess, heard about this, and he made some calls and he talked to some people, and then he came out and said, well, she's not done with the company, she's just not being used right now. And the funny thing is like when you actually read and listen actually to what they both said, they're not necessarily disagreeing with each other.
No.
Yeah. I mean, right? Like there's a lot of people that Tony doesn't use. And Britt
Tony has the opposite problem as Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has new toy syndrome.
Yeah.
Tony has 3 toy syndrome. There's only like 3 people he really wants to see at any given time. And he just wants to see the bangers between those guys or whatever. And then the rest of the show, the rest of the roster, it's like, well, okay, what can I do with this kind of a thing? I've come to this conclusion. I don't know if I'm correct, but it feels that way. But there's a lot of other things involved in this that are just, I don't know. In real sports, if you've been following, today was a very interesting day for the Khan family, in that they've been searching for a coach for their football team, and they decided the reason why they weren't getting the candidates they wanted for their football team was the general manager. So they fired the general manager, who's generally the guy who's in charge of putting together your football team.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Now, far be it from me to say that people with money sometimes think that they can do other things. But there is look, we've talked for years now that there's a bit of a management problem in AEW. It's a bit of a communication problem in AEW. But the thing that stood out to me about AEW in terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars story is the general manager is the guy who knows football. He's the guy you hire to do the stuff to know football. And when you fire him because he's not getting the coach you want, you think you know better than the general manager. I think there's a little bit of that in AEW. I think he has a crew of people he trusts, but ultimately he also wants to be one of those decision makers in there and things like that. And I think it gets him in trouble. Britt, we know, had power for a while. She was kind of the up. She was kind of the up or down. If after Kenny, when that Tony kind of leaned on to who do you sign, who do you not sign?
Yeah, especially in terms of women, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, for mostly women, because Tony didn't follow women's wrestling for the most part.
Yeah, and then Kenny disappeared for a while. So yeah, it was Britt.
Britt's an alpha. And this is an artistic endeavor with a lot of money and a lot of egos, and you live your life in the public and you live your life on television, and you want to be protected. You don't want to be mocked when you go out in public and whatnot. Britt has had some things happen to her, some that are known, some that are not.
She's also had some stuff that's been put on television. Some of it's real, some of it's not.
Some of it's real, some of it's not.
Yeah, like that reality show.
In a vacuum, Britt Baker should be. I mean, and look at her position when she came into the company. She was the first woman signed. She was going to be the focus of this division if it wasn't Kylie Ray, who quit under, let's say, contested circumstances by some things we don't want to talk about.
She got off to a rocky start and got herself over.
Yes, but it's one of those things like she wanted to be the face of AEW.
Yes, not just the women, the whole company.
Not just the women, the whole company. She has put this on herself.
Yeah.
And with that comes good and bad. And you need management that can handle egos And you also need to have plans. And that's the other thing that I think. How many people do you think could set up a meeting with Tony Khan tomorrow, knock on their door and go, "Where do you see me in a year?" And Tony will have a plot for them.
Oh, I think he'll have an answer for them, but
No, he'll have an answer. Well,
yeah,
I think if you keep winning
yeah,
matches and you keep doing well, but
yeah,
I don't mean a stat answer. I mean on a booking sheet.
yeah. I think in his head, he's got stuff for everybody. But the problem is he's only got 4 hours a week to tell his stories, and he's got a roster of 200 people. And in his mind, he wants to have stories for these 200 people, but unfortunately, he doesn't have the airtime to have stories for these 400 people. So when the people come to him and say that probably puts them at the front of his mind, and he starts working on stuff for them. And that is probably leads to part of the reason why a lot of times things just seem to come
Well,
out of
we also
nowhere.
have, but this also comes into a communication problem. We know there's a little bit of passive aggressiveness there. We
Yeah.
know that there's
Yeah.
not a, we don't want to be confrontational here and tell somebody, hey, you may have to lose this match or whatever. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
it's it's an issue when you want to be friends with the people that you've hired.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another, I mean,
Yep.
Britt's famously been sociable at Jacksonville Jaguars and things at Daly's place with Tony and others, and it's one of those things where
Well, she had a lot to do with getting Mercedes in there, I think.
yes, and
Yeah.
it's I mean, it's one of these things where I'm just like it's a two-way street for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my problem is there's a lot of AEW tribalists who every time something like this comes up goes, well, this is why this person is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Blah
Or
blah
they'll
blah
say,
blah blah.
something like, "Oh, she's not good enough in the ring, anyways. They don't need her." Like
Yeah,
that. I mean, I've seen that so many times.
I've seen
Oh,
that a few times too, and I'm just like, oh, hold on
yeah.
here.
You don't get it. You don't get it.
I
I
get
want to
that.
back.
Look, a fatal flaw of Britt is that she does think she's a better worker than she probably actually is, but
Right.
she's still very good. It's not a yeah.
And it's not as important to be a good worker as it is to be a strong character. Some people
Exactly.
can do both, but I think if you have the choice of one or the other, give me the strong character over the good worker, because you can care about a strong character. It's harder to care about a good worker.
Yes, and
I
well,
want to
hold
back.
on. Let me get one more point about Britt in
Sure.
here.
Okay.
She also needs coaching, and nobody's giving it to her. And here's why. And I'll say this, and I say this in the nicest way possible. She has naturally bitchy tendencies because she's an alpha. And it's one of those things where if you're going to be a baby face, you need to coach those away a little bit. If you have a certain viewpoint on life and you need to play another type of part, you need to get coached on that. You can't just naturally turn that on necessarily. And I think that's been a huge problem with Britt when they wanted to turn her babyface after this long heel run that she had for like years in the company. When she was, I mean, they called it sandbagging. Backstage,
Yeah.
they literally had a thing with sandbag. I mean, it's when she was burying people in promos and whatnot, you need to do a certain kind of promo to get fans back on your side versus the I'm confident in myself and I'm still a little bit snarky type of a thing. And it's yeah. Now to yours. I'm sorry I took
Okay.
your time there.
No. I just wanted to back up because something you said reminded me of something. When you talked about Jacksonville replacing their GM, I was listening to Josh Nason's Punch Out on the F4W media network, and he does a quarterly segment with Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, where Brandon goes over the AEW finances based on record, stuff that he's found out, like ratings, ticket sales, all kinds of stuff, and they go over the attendance, the popularity of the product, and everything. This is a direct quote, and I listened to it twice to make sure I got it right. And this is from Brandon Thurston, who is a pretty, I'd say, he's neutral. Like, he doesn't really favor WWE or AEW, just looks at the numbers and reports what he sees.
I think in terms of news, you're correct. I think in terms of watching wrestling, he hates WWE. But okay, go ahead.
And if that's correct, then this statement is even more indicting.
Okay.
AEW is in an indefinite stagnation state like WWE was in the late 2010s and will remain that way until someone else takes over the booking.
Okay, let me give some context because I know Brandon socially.
So do
And
I.
it was mostly in the late 2010s when he didn't want to. He'd come to WrestleMania weekend and not stay for WrestleMania because he's just like, no, that's not for me. Whatever, that kind of a thing. I guess, but bookers don't grow on trees. I mean, it's one of those
No,
things.
but everyone has a run.
But
And
yes,
then
and
he went on
your
to
point is
say,
well served in terms of
yeah.
not giving up that control necessarily. But
And that's not to say like Tony's always going to own this company and
he
he's
can be
always
in
going
the
to be in
room.
control. Right. But he
It's
should
his company.
he should hire someone. He should trust those people to make decisions and then oversee them.
Yes.
So the greater vision is him, but the minute booking of doing that's got to change, or this is
What
going
do
to
you want?
continue.
Hold on. What do you want your main event to be for the next pay-per-view? Okay, we'll get to work on the build for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Everything else in the undercard, give it to other people. Concentrate on the big picture. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, yeah. And that's not to say ignore them. Heck, you give them more attention if you put someone else in control. That promo that Mox did before this whole Death Riders thing started, you'll recall where he talked about pulling the company up by the bootstraps and somebody should be fired because they said, oh, it's the undercard, it doesn't matter. You know, you remember that famous interview he did. I mean, that would enable this because now Tony's only focused on the big picture. You've got your lieutenants that are booking the angles that, and then Tony's keeping an eye on things. Hey, this guy's getting over, that girl's getting over. We can elevate them, as opposed to trying to work angles for 200 people. It's ridiculous.
And let the people who aren't active go work elsewhere because we've had this Ricky Starks situation where apparently, I mean, he's at least saying that he's never rejected creative, and then he shows up at GCW and they pull him.
Yeah,
because he says some things. And look, the talent shouldn't probably be saying things out loud, but they're frustrated. And here's the other part of it.
That was
this is
also GCW, right?
Yeah, but this is also, this is also part of management as well. Like if somebody, and there's a little bit of this when I'm watching that first brawl today, and I didn't mind it, but it felt very. I go, there are times where I'm watching that. I'm going, this is the lamest brawl I've ever watched backstage. It's very safe. It's very soft or whatever. Vince McMahon, if it looked fake to him, would chew you out when you got backstage.
Yeah.
There's nobody doing that, I don't think, because this is because of the level of stars and whatnot. But there's no fear from any of the stars, so they get the power, and then it's like, well, who's gonna tell them? Type of a thing.
Here's my impression of what happened there. Tony's on Twitter and he's, oh yeah, God, that's great. This is awesome. Good job. And then he gave him a big hug when it was over.
Yes. Yes, it's art camp. It's theater camp. It's a theater troupe is what we have.
That's it. I did love it. So,
it was fine to me. It was fine, but it's like, I mean, we have a roster of guys who just show up for 2 weeks and then aren't used for 6 months. And Wardlow.
Girls. Yeah.
Wardlow. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it's like
Serena Deeb, who we talked about earlier.
Serena Deeb. We're going to set her up. Nope, not now because
Nyla Rose.
Britt ruined your chance. Nyla Rose. Yeah. We have lots and lots of people and they want to wrestle and they I think they want to work. Maybe some of them just want to get paid. I don't know, but I think Miro wants to work. I just think Miro just doesn't want to.
Doesn't want to work for them.
I don't think Miro respects AEW at all.
Well, okay, and you know what? That's a big part of it, and the respect. And I think that's a lot of the people there don't respect the leadership, and probably because they don't feel respected themselves. Would be my
little bit. I think that's a bit of a two-way street. I could go with that.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're gonna get to DJ's question or comment, I should say, because that'll lead right into the show, because we kind of talked about this before the show started, actually. So it was a good comment. But I want to just bring it right back to Britt, because this segment was supposed to be about Britt. If you had to put money, someone handed you $100 and said, you got to put a bet down. Britt, are we going to see her on AEW television ever again? Well, I shouldn't say ever again. The next time we see Britt Baker on television, will it be in AEW or somewhere else?
See, I was expecting her in that gauntlet as a competitor. I am going to say that she gets one last shot, But I thought that
Okay.
her last shot was her one last shot, to be honest with you. So I'm not confident on that one. I think she may just go back to dentistry and say the hell with this wrestling thing.
Well,
and I'll do
yeah,
indie dates and maybe do a run in Stardom and other things like that.
if I had to put that bet down, I would say no, we will not see her in AEW before we see her somewhere else. But if it was my decision, I would bring her back next week and have her working and having her lose, or not always lose. I mean, you want them to win
No,
sometimes, but
no, you
I
can't do that. There's no way anybody would agree to that. It's like then they're saying that about a Ray Phoenix. Oh well, he's here. He could at
nobody
least
would.
have matches. He could at least have matches and put people over on the way out. Do you
Not
understand?
everybody. Like she can beat Julia. She can beat all these people to lead up to a match with so and so that you put over, like Jamie Hayter.
Okay,
Or well, maybe not Jamie Hayter because apparently they don't get along. But
right. That's the
um,
other thing. That's part of the Wade story, though. Remember, is that nobody
do
in this
I
locker room likes her, and
do I
blah blah
want
blah.
to read this tweet that Britt sent out earlier today, or should we just drop it? Did you see that was the one that was sent to us?
Is this the Instagram thing where it's like
It's
let them
X.
talk?
It's X.
Yeah.
But
Well,
talking about thick skin.
well, no, she's talking. I mean, she's quoting this doctor or whatever, or she was on her other Instagram about gossip and stuff like that. And
Okay. So,
I think people are wrong, to be honest with you. So that's
well, I
fine.
don't even know what she's talking about, but obviously a lot of people probably
I haven't
do.
seen this tweet. What is it?
Okay. I understand that we as performers are expected to have thick skin through opinions and lies we read about ourselves, but spreading lies about my personal life is just low, weird, and something I won't tolerate. I've never cheated on anyone in my entire life. Hashtag tell your source. So somebody says that she tweeted. I'm going to have a wild guess and say this is that Abu guy's Discord.
I'm gonna say that this isn't
start.
effing news, and nobody should be asking about that. I'm gonna say this right now. Look. I don't think Sean Ross Sapp would ever run that anywhere.
Meltzer
I don't think
wouldn't.
Wade wouldn't, and Meltzer wouldn't. And those
so
are your three.
This is probably wrestling like, purists.
Oh, maybe wrestling purists. Maybe Brad Shepard.
Voices
maybe
of wrestling,
ringside news. No, voice in wrestling would never run something.
Oh yeah,
like
you
this.
work for them. Never mind. Sorry. Or it came from like a private Discord or something.
Yes, it's somebody that's connected with somebody who knows something. So it has the air of legitimacy, but
well, and that's the other thing with all of this. That okay, let's say Britt gets along with everybody, and has no problem jobbing to people. The other problem is the guy that she used to be with works for the company as well and is pushed very strongly. I like Adam Cole. I'm a big fan of his work, but if I had to choose between Adam Cole and Britt Baker, I'd be pushing Britt. Like that's just me. Yeah, like I think Britt has a lot more to offer in her division than Adam Cole does in his. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure people disagree with me.
I was about to say something about that relationship, but I'm not going to. Because it's not worth it. It's just an opinion. No, but I mean, somebody obviously said something about her and that relation. Nobody. Well, that's what she just tweeted.
Yeah,
somebody did.
Somebody did. Yeah.
And there's a lot of jerks in wrestling media who are looking for clickbait for you to go to their site.
Mm-hmm.
And sources say blah, and they'll sometimes invoke some of the people who actually know things.
Yeah.
And say that they said this and they did.
Yeah, all it takes is for like 3 people to read it and retweet it, and all of a sudden it's seen by thousands.
Like no offense. I mean, look, even the worst websites on the internet have gotten a source occasionally. Now they've burned them more than anything because they had it. But it's just that's the kind of crap I don't care about.